Let's go ahead and call the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting for January 10th. Can I get roll call and please? Thank you.
Chairperson Kimbrough.
Here.
Vice Chair Bonkowski.
Here.
Member Hastings.
Here.
Member Gah. Member Bagwell.
Here.
Member McCurry.
Here.
Member Erb.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. I'll take this. Is there any agenda changes for tonight?
No, Chair. Thank you.
None for here either. All right, item 3 is disclosures. Any member of the board may inform the chair of his or her intent to make a disclosure. Is there any disclosures tonight for any items on the agenda? Seeing none, we move forward. Under public comment, is anybody in the audience that would like to make comments on anything on the agenda tonight or any other items? We would hope that you would come forward when we're addressing the specific agenda item you have interest in. Anybody coming forward? Seeing none but staff out there. Huh? All right, so we're beyond that. So approval of the minutes. Can I have any changes or a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for December 13th, 2017 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, let's move to the public meeting items, informational only. On 6A, information on the transit surveys conducted October 30th through November 4th, 2017 on the fixed route and paratransit buses as part of the Unified Planning Work Program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a transit rider preference survey was conducted aboard Jack buses during the week of October 30th, 2017 to capture public perception on systems performance and to get any suggestions for improvement. This is a task in the current Unified Planning Work Program, the results of which will be incorporated into a future transit planning document anticipated with the next UPWP cycle. A separate survey was used for each service type, one for fixed route, one for paratransit. A total of 295 surveys were completed on the fixed route and 29 for the paratransit. Some quick highlights that I'll provide from the results are that over 80% of respondents agreed that service has improved since changes were made on April 1st, 2017. These changes were also approved by the RTC in February of 2017. Over half of respondents said they would be likely to use some form of electronic fare payment should Jack implement such a feature, such as a reloadable card or mobile payment, mobile app payment. And it is encouraging that respondents most prefer to get information and news about Jack via the Jack website or the mobile app that we do have. These sources provide real-time vehicle information and other updates that are valuable resources for riders and are administratively efficient. Future action to be taken as a result of this survey includes information for planning documents, as I mentioned, and potential future policy direction. For example, although the electronic fare payment was not as overwhelming, the response to that was not as overwhelming as anticipated, it may still be desirable when considering the initial response to the mobile app that we do have was not met with much fanfare, but now it is one of the most preferred ways for riders to obtain information. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions, staff?
I did. I have a couple comments. The first is on question 5. It looks like 18.1% of the people in Route 3 think that the route could be improved by stop changes, route or stop changes. We didn't see that same result on the other routes. It was only on Route 3. Do you know, we have any indication why it's Route 3 that people are concerned about the stops?
Each of these categories you see here, they take a bunch of different open-ended responses and try to lump them into certain ones. So even though there's several here for each one, we took those from even more, a wider array of responses and lowered them down. But for this one in particular, for Route 3, the majority of that 18% was in reference to Topsy Lane. They wrote in something about getting service down to Topsy Lane. So Route 3 is the bus that comes closest to Topsy Lane, so that would be why that one had a higher percentage for that category.
And Route 3 also has the highest ridership, correct?
That is correct.
Then my other question is on the paratransit survey on question 9. The yes votes on question 9, is that 20.7% of the total or 20.7% of the yes answers in question 8?
20% of the yes answers in question 8.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. Go ahead, Rick.
First of all, I wanted to applaud the efforts of staff on this. This, I think, is a great way to make policy changes. So I would encourage continued use of surveys and data collection that we've done. That being said, I did have a question, though, regarding the survey. Two questions, actually. How is it? Can you expand on how we developed or how we created the questions for the survey?
Sure. We had conducted a survey a few years ago, and we sort of built off that template. But we went over many iterations amongst staff in trying to determine what could be some potential things we would look at in the future. So we should maybe have some questions directed at that. For example, the electronic fare payment and other things that we've heard just over the years of, kind of anecdotal comments that we've received. We could kind of mold the survey around some of the more frequent comments that we get.
And then the other question I had was regarding the availability of the survey. Is it posted online anywhere?
It was available online. It's been, deactivated now. The poll is closed. So.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Chaz.
Is there much change seasonally in ridership overall between summer and other seasons?
There is. You do see a significant decline when it gets colder or if we have a wet month. A large percentage of our ridership is the senior-free bus passes that we do. They can ride, the seniors can get a bus pass for a full year, fiscal year, and they can ride as many times as they want. And many of them ride it just socially, just to go on and see the drivers or see other friends of theirs that they know ride the bus, and they'll kind of taper off a little bit when it gets cold or windy or wet.
And so it was, taken in the fall, the survey. I just wondered, do you feel like the results would be fairly consistent with what would happen if it was taken in the summer?
We tried to target a kind of a shoulder season, just to get more of an even keeled response. So.
Thanks.
Anybody else? I have a couple questions too. I was just curious when it says no response. There were a lot of no people or didn't want to say anything. Was it by question by question? So, but question 1, so you have 57% was just that question, not the whole survey.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And then I was curious, I live out near a couple bus stops near the hospital, and I see these people out there colder than heck sitting next to a sign. I was amazed that nowhere in the report people said that they'd like to have a sheltered bus stop somewhere.
Yeah, it was one of the options. Bus stops with more amenities, for example, question 3. It wasn't too high on their priority list for some reason.
Yeah, that surprised me.
There were some other areas where they indicated, there were some open-ended responses that said they wanted some shelters or benches, but it wasn't as high as we were kind of expecting.
Yeah. So you do an action plan out of this here sometime that shows response to this survey, and you bring it to this board, I guess, in the future?
Sure, yes.
All right.
We can do that.
Thank you. Anybody from the public want to come forward and speak to this? Seeing none, we bring it back. It's an informational item only, so there's no action on it. 6B is to inform CAMPO of a recent application to the Walkability, that sounds like a song to me, Walkability, Action Institute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In December, staff submitted an application to the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors for attendance at the Step It Up Action Institute to improve walking and walkability. This application was for a multidisciplinary team consisting of a representative from the MPO, a health representative, a transportation professional, an elected official, and up to 2 additional team members. We selected to add 1 additional team member from our local bicycle and walking advocacy organization, Muscle Powered. The request for assistance was to receive travel funds to attend the Walking Institute. The purpose of the Institute was for the team members to learn about best practices for promoting walking and walkability in Carson City and to develop an action plan that they could then bring back and implement in the community. I am sad to say that unfortunately yesterday we received notification that our application was not selected to attend the Walking Institute. But we still think that there is a little bit of a silver lining in that this provided us with a really good opportunity to get some important partners in the room and take stock of the many activities that we are doing here in Carson City to support walking and walkability. CAMPO staff will use the ideas generated from the development of this application as a jumping off point for other pedestrian safety activities, including retooling our bicycle and pedestrian working group a little bit to make them a little bit more effective and to help staff, to help them provide staff with a little bit better direction. Staff will continue to pursue opportunities for funding and education in the areas of walking and walkability. If anyone has any questions, I'll take those now.
Questions? Go ahead, Chess.
Is this an annual conference or planning thing?
It's been held annually. This would have been the 4th time. They're not certain that funding will be available to do it in the future, but if it becomes available, we'll certainly consider applying again.
Right, so did you get any feedback that might help us next time around?
We did receive some feedback about what the successful applications generally contained. One of the things that, unfortunately, in our illustrious leaders condition, one of the things that they mentioned specifically was that they wanted to see someone in a decision-making capacity in transportation, and Lucia was not able to attend. Another thing that they said the more successful applications that got selected had a very specific thing that they were wanting to go there and work on. And we didn't have necessarily one specific thing that we were targeting. And so I think that was a little bit more what they were looking for.
Courtney, conferences generally, you would go to a conference just for general information purposes, or you may go with a specific agenda because there's either people or breakout sessions that you want to go to specifically so that you can network. How valuable, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you rate this conference? Was this something that staff would go to because it would just generally be helpful, or because you would be looking for specific answers to specific concerns?
Yeah, so this particular opportunity isn't a conference in what we typically think of when we think of conferences with breakout sessions. It was a learning institute. So this was like 3 days of classes, not so much breakout sessions that we would choose which ones were most relevant to us, but like a mini academy about best practices in walking and walkability. One of the key deliverables from this particular opportunity was the development of an action plan that we could bring back to the community that would give us some specific concrete steps for developing policy systems and environmental changes that could improve walking and walkability in Carson City. So I think it would have been very valuable for us to attend. Unfortunately, we weren't selected. But I do think that it would be worthwhile to apply again if the opportunity is made available in the future.
The reason I bring it up is because if it's something that you feel is a high priority, I would be willing to fund one person to go if you can come up with donations for other staff members to go.
That is very generous. However, they only accept 9 teams. It wasn't necessarily a funding issue so much as they didn't want us. Apologies if that's not politically correct.
We didn't measure up.
The politically correct.
Right.
Any other questions? You know, I looked up their website to see how they do that and the different years they've done it, and it's a really great program. So then I've known there's some stuff on the internet if you want to know the walkability of your community. So I looked up Carson City, and we're like 34 points, which means that we're a great city to drive a car around in, not walkable community. So they have different ratings and stuff on this website. So I was all excited that you guys could go so we could, because Las Vegas has 41, which is higher than us, which just blew me away. And Reno's a 38, and we're down at 34, but there's a lot of people lower than we are. And the group that does that, they have all these standards that they set, and I won't go through all those different standards to set those scores, but it would have been a great chance to visit. And it's actually combined a lot of times with transit and bikes, so there's that 3-prong look at it. And so I thought I was all loaded up and ready to move this forward, so.
If I may add, in Carson City, we're urban, but we're still fairly rural, which, limits our walkability opportunities. And we also have demographic composition. We lean towards an older population, where a lot of metro areas have a younger population than we do. And so for those reasons, this link of this specific opportunity with health, I think is really important. And so being able to kind of get these people in the room as we try to apply for this, I think we should continue that dialogue. It's really important here, and staff will certainly continue to do so.
Well, maybe you'll have that group that meets on bikes might expand their agenda a little bit into the walkability part too, that you have a nice community group that meets quarterly, usually.
Yeah, we do have the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board that meets at Public Works, and that is like you mentioned it being a bike thing, and you're right, it sort of was formed in response to our bicycle-friendly communities application, but we certainly tackle pedestrian issues in that group as well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Anybody from the public like to come forward on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back since it's informational only, and we'll move to item 7, internal communications and admin matters, future agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to let you all know that it was brought to my attention that certain public comment period protocols were inadvertently misfollowed. This is my fault, with regard to the RTP approvals that happened last month for the safety targets. So staff have opened a 30-day public comment period for those RTP amendments, and I'll be bringing forward the actual amendments that followed proper protocol for you to vote on next month. If you have any questions on that, please
That's why
let me
we
know.
got that email then with the, okay, I wondered. Okay.
Yes, sir. So
All right,
those
I
are the
got it.
amendments that were approved. However, we want to do everything right, so we're going to bring those back. The public comment period is open from December 28th through January 29th. We're about halfway through, a couple weeks into it, and we haven't received any comments to date, but certainly any we do receive we'll consider incorporating. Next month, you will also see a transportation improvement program, the TIP amendment, to incorporate a new project on Fairview Drive, which you'll hear about at RTC later this evening for STBG funding. And you'll hear the safety targets approval. There are some couple other things we're working on, but resources permitting, the agenda's looking fairly light. Thank you.
Then I got to back up a little bit. On the agenda, we had approval of the minutes, and I did not ask for any abstentions on that, but I was actually given direction a few years ago by George Taylor that even if you weren't at the meeting, you could approve minutes. So I wasn't looking for abstentions, but I would ask for your opinion on that so I don't get myself in trouble, so I could make sure the 2 new members had a chance to abstain if they needed to.
So under the provisions of the open meeting law, you are authorized to cast a vote on the meetings or on the meeting minutes, even though you were not present at that meeting. There's no requirement under the OML provisions that you have to abstain.
All right.
But you may.
You may if you want.
Right.
Yeah, you can, you just don't have to.
Yeah,
So-
for the record, Mr. Chair, I will abstain. I
Okay.
wasn't there. So.
All right, so how about yourself?
I was actually present at that meeting,
Oh.
Although I was not on the board.
Right, I
At
understand.
the time, I was present, so I'll,
You
my
still
vote,
keep your
I'll let
vote?
my vote stand.
All right, so I hope that's enough that I've covered that it can change that without calling for the question again? I
No,
hope.
I think that the earlier vote stands the way it was. There's
Okay.
no modification to that vote or that motion at this time. I think that just for clarity on the record, you were just asking a substantive question with respect to abstentions.
All right, thank you. All right. And then I did not introduce the two new members, Chaz McQuarrie and Randy Gaw. I hope I don't screw that up, Randy. And think that's wonderful. We have two new members, and thank you for being a part of this and taking your private time up, but that we have very little of sometimes. We didn't have such an exciting meeting for you for Campo tonight, but we'll bump it up for RTC for you.
Not by much.
Yeah, not much. Yes, sir. So is there any other board comments? I'll start on this side with Mr. Hasty.
None for me, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I do have one, and you probably know about this already, Lucia, but there's a NACTO webinar on integrating bike share programs with transit coming up on the 16th. It's just a free webinar, but I think in light of the transit survey and I know there's been interest at the city level, Carson City level of getting bike share in town, that might be a good one to attend for some of your staff.
We'll look into it. Thank you.
All right, no comments from the board. Last chance for the public to come forward if there's anybody wanting to come forward on any item. Seeing none, we bring it back to the next meeting tentatively scheduled 4:30 on Wednesday, February 14th, and I call for a adjournment. So moved. And we'll be back in session at
We'll see,
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2018, and we are in the Sierra Room at the Carson City Community Center at 851 East Williams Street. Tamara, can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Bankowski,
Here.
Member Goff, or Commissioner Goff,
Here?
Commissioner Kimbrough, here. Commissioner Bagwell,
Here.
Commissioner McQuarrie,
Here.
a quorum's present.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any requests for changes from the commissioners? Seeing none, we will move on to item 3. Do we have any upcoming disclosures from any members of the commission tonight? I believe we have 2.
Yes.
Okay, and that's on
Yes.
item
6B.
6B. All right.
Does that mess up the quorum?
No.
They're voting.
They're voting.
Oh,
We're just disclosing and voting, right?
I got it.
Okay.
We're stepping out.
All right,
Okay.
we are now on item 4 on the agenda, public comment, and I'm going to start. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank 2 members who've rolled off of the commission, Jack Centeno, who served the last year. I'd like to thank him for his service, and then also Jim Smolinski, who we were just trying to figure out. We believe he was on the commission for either 7 or 8 years. So he was an integral part of this commission for quite a while, and we'd like to give him a special thank you for his service. And we have 2 new members of the commission, starting with this meeting. We have on my right, your left, if you're watching, Randy Gaw, and on my left, your right, is Chaz McQuarrie. So welcome to both of you. I know that you both have a lot of knowledge and experience on these subjects, so we're looking forward to your input. Do we have any other public comment tonight? I see nobody approaching the podium, so we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of December 13, 2017 for the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And we have
One
one
abstain.
abstention.
Yeah, I
So
abstain.
4 in favor, 1 abstention. We are now on to the public meeting items. Item 6A for possible action to nominate and elect a chairperson and vice chairperson for the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission for a 1-year term. Lucia, you going to take this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per the NRS, the commission must be composed of representatives selected by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, including 2 members of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Bagwell and Supervisor Bonkowski, and 3 representatives from the city at large, Mr. McQuarrie, Mr. Kimbrough, and Mr. Gaw. From that, the chair must be a member of the Board of Supervisors, but the vice chair may be anyone on RTC. City policies and procedures do encourage rotation. However, it's not required for this particular board. With that, I will turn it over for you, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. So at this time, then, I would open the floor for nominations for the chairperson of the Carson City RTC.
I'll like to make a motion to nominate Brad Bonkowski as the chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. Then we'll move on and open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Okay. Then I would nominate Lori Bagwell as vice chairman person. Are there other nominations for that? Okay. Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. So we now take office, or
Keep going.
immediately. Moving on. Item 6B for possible action to approve the submission of 2 transportation alternative program grant applications, 1 infrastructure and 1 non-infrastructure by the Public Works Department, each requiring a 5% local match. And we will now take disclosures. So we'll start with you, Randy, and then we'll go to Chaz.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. I serve on the board of directors for Muscle Power, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I signed and submitted a letter of support for the commission to approve the item now before the RTC. The Ethics Commission has opined that on line item issues related to funding, a public officer like myself who volunteers on a board of a nonprofit has a commitment in a private capacity to the interest of that organization. However, here, the item before the RTC is not the line item issue related to funding contemplated by the Ethics Committee. Instead, this is merely an approval to apply for a grant. Therefore, a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by a private commitment to muscle powered. As such, I will be participating and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Randy. Jazz?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. I serve on the board of directors for Muscle Powered, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Ethics Commission has opined that on line item issues related to funding, a public officer like myself who volunteers on a board of a nonprofit has a commitment in a private capacity to the interests of that organization. However, here, the item before the RTC is not the line item issue related to funding contemplated by the Ethics Commission. Instead, this is merely an approval to apply for a grant. Therefore, a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by a private commitment to muscle powered. As such, I will be participating and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Jazz. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item regards the submission of 2 Transportation Alternative Program grants, otherwise known as TAP grants, by the Public Works Department. One grant is under the infrastructure category and the other is under the non-infrastructure category. The infrastructure grant application is requesting approximately $1.6 million for a multi-use path from Colorado Street all the way down to the Edmund Sports Complex. This proposed path is identified as segment number 4 in the 2011 Carson City Freeway Corridor Multi-Use Path Alignment Alternative Study. The non-infrastructure grant is requesting approximately $700,000 for program continuation and expansion of safe routes to school. Currently, the program is funded through June 30th, 2020. Both projects would be 95% reimbursable with a 5% local match. If awarded, the project's local match would be budgeted in fiscal year 2019. I would also like to add that we've already received letters of support for the multi-use path project from Muscle Powered and from Carson City's Parks and Recreation Department. This project will also go to the CAMPO board next month, so the board can give project preference to all the projects being submitted within the CAMPO area. Those conclude my comments, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Lori?
So when staff selected this particular infrastructure grant, is that based on it's our number 1 priority of a path, or are there other, why was this one selected?
Good question. So it's based on a number of reasons. The TAP grants, they do give priority to kind of these non-motorized bicycle and pedestrian heavy projects. And also, CAMPO has, we've gone for TAP projects in the past with previous segments of this multi-use path, and we've seen success in getting awarded the grant for this project. So we felt like this would be a good fit to keep extending the multi-use path and using the alternative study.
So you're saying because portions of it have already been funded with this source that you believe that they'll want to complete the project, and that's the only way we can complete it is with this funding source?
Yes.
And there's not another path that's in the city that's also had grant funding and not complete? That would follow the same rule, the same issue?
Yeah, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the commissioners? Chaz, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I really highly support this. Obviously, I'm a member of Muscle Powered. And it has been a priority of Muscle Powered to get a continuous north-south path through the city, and this is part of that. And the reason that it's been successful for previous grants is it does exactly that. It's connectivity, it's completing connectivity, and not just connectivity in this case, but it's connecting dense urban neighborhoods to a very important sports complex, Pete Livermore Park. So it's a really key segment, and I really hope we get the grant, because it'll be a great addition to the city's bike network, or multi-use path network, I should say.
Haley, is there any additional easements required for this path? Have we acquired all of the easements?
So this path would be in Carson City right-of-way, or there's 1 or 2 parcels in NDOT right-of-way.
So there's no private, I thought there was down at the south end of Edmonds.
It is very close to the project, but not within the project, so no private.
Okay. All right. Final call for questions from the commissioners. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this tonight? I see nobody approaching, so I will bring this back to the commission and entertain a motion.
I move to approve the submission of 2 transportation alternative programs TAP grant applications, 1 infrastructure and 1 non-infrastructure by the Public Works Department, each requiring a 5% local match.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We're now on to item 6C for possible action to allocate federal fiscal year 2018 surface transportation block grant funds to Fairview Drive between South Carson Street and Roop Street. And Dirk, you have this one.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Staff is proposing to allocate the 2018 STBG funds to a portion of Fairview Drive. The portion is between South Carson Street and Roop Street. Back in December, CAMPO took action to kind of swap some of the allocations of STBG funding. The 2018 portion was going to go to Lyon County and to Carson. After talking with Lyon County staff, they weren't ready to kind of develop for a project. There is a timeline with these funds, and it is kind of resource heavy. So again, a little bit more information on this STBG funding. This is federal funding that is allocated to CAMPO. It is a 95% federal portion that is matched by a 5% local share. So about every year there's about $1 million that's allocated to CAMPO that we need to use. And if we don't use it, some of it can revert back to the Nevada Department of Transportation. So Fairview Drive in this area is in poor condition. As you know, this is the area that used to handle freeway traffic, so that is off now. We kind of see that as a good timing. This area is in poor condition. We did a site visit. We had a few folks out there, some project engineers. We actually used resources from UNR to come down and to evaluate the road. So this is a good candidate. This is going to include a little bit of reconstruction. That's kind of between California and Carson. Then also there's going to be some isolated patching, and then there's going to be a mill and overlay between California and Roop. So the estimated cost is about $593,000. So the local match would be about $29,000. If RTC approves this, then CAMPO is responsible for putting this item into the Transportation Improvement Program and getting that ball rolling, and then moving forward with getting an agreement through NDOT, going through design, construction. So if all that is approved, we're looking at a design kind of in 2018 with construction of 2019, which would kind of fit in nicely, possibly with some improvements on South Carson Street. So that's some of the rationale behind this project. That concludes my comments, but I'm happy to answer any of the questions.
Dirk, hopefully you can answer this. Darren might need to come up and answer this, just so I'm clear on this. If there's 2 areas that call for a pavement patch, but we're doing a mill and overlay.
Yeah.
So the pavement patch is basically reconstructing the asphalt after the mill, before the overlay.
It was kind of shocking me, but that's how it's done. And what they do is they go in and they do the patching, and it's a full depth patching, and then they go back and then do a mill and overlay. And what you get is a smooth surface on top. And so that's why it's done that way.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. And then it looks like it includes the intersection of Roop and Fairview.
That is correct. We saw some failures in that intersection, and it was right. We thought that was the right thing to do. There are some drainage issues at that intersection, and this is going to this will allow us to address those issues.
And will the turn pockets change with this mill and overlay and partial reconstruction? Because I know we came in and we did the concrete curbing turn lanes because it was the freeway exit. Are those still necessary, and is that going to change now?
Some of the lane, the turning configuration may change. We haven't got into design. We've looked at it. Some of it is going to depend on what happens with South Carson Street. You know, for example, depending on if we get the tire grant or what ends up happening to that area of the roadway. We've started talking internally about what we might see there, whether it's to allow a free right, so you can go north and then have 2 left turn lanes, because 3 left turn lanes might not be needed anymore. We've also started talking about that median that prevents turning access from California. We need to bring a few other folks into that conversation, such as the sheriff's office, because they were, from my understanding, they were part of the reason why some of that was installed in the first place. And so I don't have an answer for you yet, but it's something that we will look at with design.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? I see 4 no's. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this item tonight? Since there is no public here. All right, then I will bring this back to the commission and entertain a motion.
I move to allocate federal fiscal year 2018 surface transportation block grant funds to Fairview Drive between South Carson Street and Roop Street.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mark did. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. We are now on to internal communications and administrative matters, non-action items. We are starting with item 7A, the Transportation Manager's Report. Lucia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those that were not at the Board of Supervisors meeting where the city engineer provided a recent update on South Carson Street, I wanted to bring that update here as well. Staff's in the process of finalizing the project team. Sierra Nevada Construction was selected for the CMAR, so we've brought them on and we're finalizing that team now. We are working on negotiating scope and fee with some of the other consultants for electrical and landscape design work. The city is the lead designer, as you all probably know. We're really excited about that. They're working on the roadway geometrics and advancing a conceptual design for you. Staff will be giving updates to RTC at 30, 60, and 90% design, so you can anticipate those, and those will be roughly concurrent with the Board of Supervisor updates. And we're on schedule to start construction in the spring of 2019. The second update I have for you, myself and the management team at Public Works, we're renewing our commitment to transparency and increased communication. So from the transportation side, 2 things that you may or may not be aware of or have already started seeing. On social media, you'll see an increased presence if you are not a Facebook aficionado of Carson City Public Works. I encourage you to like that page. You're going to start seeing a lot more posts about what our Public Works folks are doing, as well as updates such as the road report, highlights of transportation projects, information like that. We're trying to get more information out there, and we're excited about it. If you have any feedback or you get questions, let us know. The second piece is an upcoming e-news blast. We're putting together essentially an e-newspaper with a series of brief articles on what we're doing in the transportation group. Some of these things have already come to CAMPO and RTC, and some of them are kind of new or reminders, such as information on our snow removal program that we do. So we expect that to come out at the end of the month. And the third update I wanted to provide, there were some questions at the CAMPO and RTC interviews at the last Board of Supervisor meeting related to the bicycle-friendly community certification here. I just wanted to let you know, and we did some research and we confirmed our renewal date is indeed in August, which was said during the interviews. It's one application that we'll have to submit, and then the bicycle-friendly communities folks decide if we're either bronze or upgraded to silver. Staff have downloaded that application, and we're starting to speak with our advocates and partners in the city to make sure that we're providing the most robust and competitive application we can. And you will likely see it before we submit it, so keep an eye out for that. And those are my updates for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Do you have any questions from the commissioners on those items? Go ahead, Mark.
I just want to ask, I guess it's being nosy, but social network takes a lot of time from people's schedules and stuff. So are you guys like splitting the tasks, or did they hire PR person, or, I mean, because you got to monitor that all the time and then stay up to date. It's not easy sometimes.
That's a great question. One of the benefits of bringing Ms. Bloomer over to Public Works from the Department of Health was that 10% of her time is budgeted for Public Works communications and outreach, including social media. So we're really fortunate to have her on board. And we're also, taking a team approach. So there's other folks on the Public Works staff that are helping out. And so it's been a really good thing so far, and we're excited about it.
Mine wasn't to slow you down or be anything negative, so I think that's really wonderful, and that you're doing that and coming into that network. But I'm not a Facebook person, so we'll have to find another way to get that stuff.
I understand that 5 a.m. is a really popular time to tweet. We're
National standard.
moving on to item 7B, the Street Operations Activity Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to highlight a couple of pieces, it was requested by RTC a couple of months ago that on the second table here under tree care and maintenance that we add a line item for tree replacement. We added the year-to-date tree replacement, which is roughly 48, and primarily that had to do with the trees replaced at the wastewater facility. So those are there. No trees removed in this reporting period. You'll also see in the third table there a significant amount of sidewalk work. We try to do those in kind of this time of year. Down in the stormwater section, we've been cleaning a lot of drainage inlets. And then on the last page at the very bottom, we did have one rain and flood event that we took care of. So those were some highlights I just wanted to point out for you. Thank you.
Any questions on the street operations? Seeing none, we are on project status report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will go fairly quickly. The Carson City Freeway multi-use path, the roadway there is completed if you've driven on it. If you haven't driven on it yet, I encourage you to do so. It looks great. The path is substantially complete. There's two pieces that we're going to get finished in the next few weeks. One is to construct a head wall, and the other is to install the cable railing adjacent to the path. So that's all getting wrapped up, and that'll be completed. Originally, the schedule had us done in December, so we're still on schedule. Sierra Vista Lane reconstruction, we did receive bids for construction. The BIA selected A&K Earth Movers. They were the low bidder. There was a pre-construction meeting earlier this week, and we are moving forward and on schedule. Silver Save Drive reconstruction, that project, as you know, is on schedule for construction in the spring or summer next year. I'm going to skip over all these ceiling projects. Those will remain the same through the end, or through next spring. CDBG on North Carson Street, probably in the next update. We haven't yet received that additional $79,000 that Public Works was awarded, so you're not seeing that in here just because we don't have it yet, just administratively, but you'll see that in the next update. The battery backup improvements, these were approved at the December 13th RTC meeting, so we're moving forward with the purchase, and installation will commence once we receive that hardware. The South Carson Street bicycle and pedestrian improvements. This project requires an LPA agreement with NDOT to get a notice to proceed to use those grant monies. We did receive a draft agreement from NDOT that staff are reviewing, and we are keeping on schedule with that, so we're excited. There hasn't been an update to the freeway multi-use path at Colorado Street, so I'm going to skip over that one. I'm also going to skip over the South Carson Street resurfacing, and with that, I'll ask for any questions or comments you might have.
Any questions from the commissioners? Go ahead, Chaz.
So, Lucia, the new bike path, multi-use path from the south end of Lompa to the linear ditch path, because of budget constraints, you couldn't construct the bit that didn't take it to Highway 50. Is there a plan to get that bit done at some point, hopefully not too far in the future?
That's a great question. We'd like to complete them all because it's connecting to an existing path. Sometimes that bumps things up on the schedule, but without current funding, it's not I don't have it scheduled at this point.
If I may follow up, just a hypothetical, if we get the grant for the piece of path that goes from Colorado south to the Edmund Sports Complex, Pete Livermore Sports Complex, and by some miracle it comes in under budget, would we be eligible to move those funds to something to complete a different section of the path?
Typically, no. Typically, when you have a TAP agreement, it's kind of set. There's a project scope, and then if it comes in your budget, some of those, the funds they go back to NDOT.
But I would add that the current proposed path for the TAP that was heard earlier this evening, in previous years, TAP had a cap of $750,000, and that cap has been removed this year as part of that program. So we actually requested the full length of the remaining portion of that path all the way down to the sports complex. So that said, if you call it a TAP program here at Carson City, there's no more pieces of that particular path that we would apply for in the next TAP grant cycle. So potentially we could apply for this portion of other path that you're asking about.
Yeah, it's not that long. Is there a possibility of including it in the TAP grant for the main piece?
We can look at it, but probably not.
Because? Is it because there's a gap? Because it's not a fully connected
Because it's not
project?
Because it's not continuous.
Right. Any additional questions?
Joe could answer. Who does that grant?
All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I do have another question. It seems as though when we get funds, federal funds, TAP grants through NDOT, and we're required to have the local project, assistance agreement, it just seems to take forever to get stuff done. And is there any way we can diplomatically get NDOT to speed up their end, because I think that is where much of the holdup is, just sending agreements backwards and forwards and reviewing preliminary and intermediate and final plans and all that sort of stuff.
It does take time, and like any other organization, that the NDOT LPA agreement team has had some recent turnover, so things are taking, it takes time. I have talked with the other MPO directors, both from Washoe and from Las Vegas, and asked them if they have any tricks for expediting this process. And from what I've learned, NDOT is very fair, and that as things come in, everyone, it just takes that long. But we, of course, will continue to look at ways to expedite our projects.
I just want to add, I was on the STAC committee for years, and NDOT has far better at working with the local communities than they were in the past. If you went to some of the older meetings, and the MPOs and some of the big cities would come in there, some serious discussion, so they have worked very hard. And Sandra actually has been kind of a key player in this speeding things up and getting the money to the groups, at which we've been fortunate to get some of these grants that, like Patrick, fought for years. So I'd have to say that they're really improving and working really hard, better than they ever did go back 10 years or so. So I kind of give them some accolades for what they're doing recently.
All right, if there's no further questions, then we will move on to item 7D, future agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to the things we've discussed already this evening, the city manager, Mr. Stuckey, will come and give an update on the Curry Street project at the next meeting. And staff have also been working on a signal maintenance agreement with Story County that we hope, if we can get it in time, to bring it to the February meeting as well.
For Story County, where would the signals be located? I'm trying to think of signals in Story County.
There are no current signals in Story County.
Okay, so that's why I can't think of any.
But there's plans to have a new signal where USA Parkway comes in there by the Tesla zone.
Okay.
Last weekend.
Any additional items coming up?
We're working on a lot, Mr. Chair. Staff are busy. In March, we're going to start seeing a lot of the grant pursuals for federal transit money. So you're going to get a lot of transit grant information thrown at you. It's probably not going to happen until March. The federal fiscal year, as you all know, has started. We just haven't received those documents yet. So when those come in, if they came in early, potentially you'd see it in February, but I have it slated for March at this point. That's the kind of big action coming at you.
Thank you. Are there any future agenda item requests from the commissioners? I see none, so we are moving on to agenda item 8, board comments. Staff reports and comments from members of the RTC board. I will start over on my left. Chaz, do you have any?
No.
No? Lori? Mark? Rena? Okay. Final chance for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to come up for public comment on any item? Nobody is approaching, so we are now on item 10. Next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, February 14th. Isn't that Valentine's Day? All right, immediately following the CAMPO meeting. And with that, we are on item 11 for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved, and thank you all for participating. We are adjourned.